What's going on, everyone? My name is UnderTheRadar, and welcome back to the Draft League Viabilities. Obviously, you can already see it on your screen. This one's going to be on Mega Glalie. This one was requested in the comments, and I kind of sort of really wanted to talk about it because realistically, I've never really looked into this Pokemon. Very interesting Pokemon in Draft League format because I think it's hardly ever used, which is kind of understandable. Very, very, very poor defenses. Kind of. It's not really frail, but it's not bulky either, and realistically it's pretty weak as well. The only thing that makes it really strong is this refrigerate ability with an amazing move in Double Edge as well as Earthquake. It gets access to Spikes, Explosion, very, very, very unique move pool, a way of killing fairies, and it even gets Freeze Dry for the special side to be able to hit water type super effectively. However, even though it does get all of these ways to hit Pokemon very, very hard, I believe that it is still super important that you make this Pokemon a Pokemon that wall breaks everything but bulky waters. So this thing can be a really good wall breaker for most typings that aren't steel types or water types. So I think it's very important that you pair this thing with a very good fire type, something that baits in water types that you can then drop in an electric type with. So a really good one that comes to mind that's high tier, which is very possible to get, is Infernape. So Infernape, it baits in bulky waters almost all the time, and it helps out with killing the bulky steels. And it also can sort of bait in bulky fairies if you're clicking close combat, which is really good for Glalie because it can really break down bulky fairies pretty easily. Ultimately, I don't think that this thing is ever going to be a sweeper late game. It's way too slow for that. With base 100 speed, it has the same speed as Mega Medicham, but what this thing doesn't have is really good priority. It does have Ice Shard, which is pretty cool, but Ice Shard doesn't hit enough super effectively, whereas Medicham has like Fake Out and Bullet Punch and things like that that can really wear things down quickly. But if you're able to bait in bulky waters, which is what Infernape does, and then if you're able to trap them or kill them, so Delmise looks really, really nice for a low tier Pokemon. But if you're able to get a really good electric type that benefits from setup, if you're able to get a very good electric type that benefits from having bulky water switch out, or a bulky electric type that has a really good move pool. Something that comes to mind right away is Heliolisk. What it does is with the dry skin ability, if water types come in, you can switch into this even hard because you can tank the Scald. It's immune, it gives you health back, and it gets access to some really good moves that can even help break down bulky steels that Glalie doesn't want to have to kill. So with access to moves like Thunderbolt, it gets access to Focus Blast, it gets access to Surf, Dark Pulse, Dragon Pulse, things like that. Even Low Kick for really heavy Pokemon, because even though it's base 55 attack, I have used Low Kick before because it's done more than a Focus Blast would. I think it was to like a Registeel, like a Spadef Registeel. I think Low Kick did more. I could be wrong. But I have used it before. But the big thing that I think Heliolisk benefits from this is U-turn. That Glalie benefits is Heliolisk U-turn as well as Infernape's U-turn. So you have a really good like pivoting core that I've used before. I had it in, I believe, NPA, maybe? Where did I have it? No, I didn't have it. A-Drive had Infernape, I had Heliolisk, but I had Megazard X, and I had like Braviary, I had Alolan Persian, I had a bunch of other Pokemon, so I had a bunch of other Pokemon that could pivot. So I think that's what Glalie needs, is it needs really good offense that can pivot, specifically offense that breaks down bulky waters and bulky steels, because this breaks down pretty much everything else. It breaks down bulky fairies, bulky grasses definitely can switch into this thing, and even then, if you're running Adamant, you can probably break down most bulky waters. It's going to take a lot to do it, and if you're breaking down bulky waters, then Heliolisk isn't as needed, and what you need something that benefits from bulky waters being gone, which Infernape is also perfect in that scenario. For defensively, you need something to tank fighting hits, because Heliolisk is extremely weak to fighting, Glalie is extremely weak to fighting. Something that pops off like the top of my head immediately is Necrozma. Amazing. Another really good one would be Cresselia, because it's just fat and it's going to force players to either bring stall breakers, which Heliolisk, Infernape, and Glalie can take advantage of. Things like wow, I'm just drawing a complete blank on every single Torn. There we go, Torn. These Pokemon can actually take advantage of Torn pretty well with Volt Switch, Ice Shard, Double Edge, things like that. So Cresselia is a really good one, but Ghost types I think are even better, just because you're also able to threaten bulky Psychics that Infernape doesn't really like. So a really good bulky ghost that comes to mind that's also kind of sort of low tier is Kofag. Just hit caps lock. And what this also does is this gives you Toxic Spikes. And what Toxic Spikes do for you that are absolutely phenomenal are they chip things down for Glalie to be able to break down bulky waters even easier, Heliolisk to break down bulky steels or bulky waters, and this thing to also break down bulky steels and bulky waters. So these four together do create a very good combination, but you really have a low tier draft right now. You have so much room to play. You have a lot of different variations that you can do, and you also don't have a lot of crucial types. Like you don't have a water type, you don't have a grass type, you don't have a fairy, dragon, or a steel, so you can get a lot of like good stuff, especially with Mega Glalie typically giving you more points whenever you pick it. So you can get things like a really good thing that also helps take out bulky waters. That's a high tier Pokemon. Is Celesteela. I can't type today. I'm so tired, guys. I'm sorry. Is Celesteela. It pretty much forces massive prep around it, and Glalie combined with Celesteela can break down bulky water types as they are for Infernape themselves. The way that this thing can break down the majority of bulky waters is by setting up on it with Leech Seed and Protect, and it also gets access to Energy Ball, and it gets Giga Drain, which is pretty big. And with its amazing stats, you can literally make this thing boost any possible way you want. I want to draft Celesteela so badly, but I know I'm not going to be able to before the end of Gen 7. So ultimately, I do think that Celesteela works out really well. If it were up to me, I would draft Celesteela first. It's typically one of the first things that goes, so it's kind of sort of hard to get it unless you're early on. But there's a bunch of things that help break down bulky waters that are in higher tiers. You have things like Zeraora. You have, but that would replace Heliolisk. It's a really good thought. You need a good Stealth Rocker. And I hate Garchomp. I truthfully hate Garchomp. But Garchomp is also another way to pressure bulky water. So Garchomp actually does fit extremely well on this build. With the Rough Skin ability, it helps take on like bulky steels again, which means that, let's say, so a move that I think a lot of people forget about that they shouldn't forget about is it up here? No, it's typically down at the very bottom, but it is Workup. What? This thing doesn't get Workup? I'm actually disgusted, and I never want to look at Mega Glalie literally ever again. But like Sub Double Edge, things like that, Sub Return, can really help out with Mega Glalie, and having Garchomp come in, it basically forces in either a bulky water or a bulky fairy. If it forces in the bulky fairy, then you have Celesteela. If it forces in the bulky water, then you have Heliolisk. If they were like continuously make those switches, then you just drop in your Mega Glalie, and then you can go ahead and go to town. These 6 really do work well with Mega Glalie, in my opinion. They can really help it shine and help take out the bulk that it needs to in order to be able to break down and force sacks. As I said before, it's not going to be your kill leader, and it's not going to be a very good late game cleaner, and I say this because of its very middling base speed tier of 100. It's very mediocre, and because of that, that's why it's so low tier. So building around it is difficult, because typically, as a breaker, Infernape will do better. Typically, as a cleaner, Infernape will do better. As a setup sweeper, which Glalie can't set up at all, you have Celesteela, you have SD, Nasty Plot, Infernape, you have a bunch of other setup sweepers, you have Calm Mind, Kofag, you have a bunch of things just with these 6 right here that Glalie can do better, but Glalie like it benefits from the things that these can do if you don't run them as like a setup or a breaker or something along those lines. Ultimately, I don't think anyone should ever draft Mega Glalie. I think it's pretty poor. I think that it's I would rather draft no Mega than Mega Glalie, to put it that way. I would rather draft another tier 3 than a Mega Glalie, because typically with a tier 3 that's not a Mega, I can choice Scarf it, I can choice Bandit, I can use it for setup, and I can do it for a bunch of different things. But if you want to draft around Mega Glalie, make sure you get a really good fire type that can help out with bulky steels, and a really good electric type that can help out with bulky waters, and then this thing should be able to break pretty well. It's not weak, but it's not strong, so you guys are going to struggle with it. Not like heavily, but you will struggle with it. So I hope you guys did find this a little bit informative. This Pokemon, I didn't do it earlier because I don't like it, and because I think that this video isn't going to be much help for people that want to draft around it, but I do want to give a little bit of help where I can, and I think that this is the best way to start for Mega Glalie. But with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.